The diplomatic meeting on Qatar 7 was meant to bring peace between humans and the Vralth. The Vralth were huge aliens almost 8 feet tall with sharp claws and teeth that could tear through metal. They came from a dangerous world full of deadly storms and wild beasts. This hard life made them the most feared warriors in the galaxy. Everyone knew the Vralth never made friends with other species. They trusted no one outside their own kind. Commander Lisa Grant stood by the large window of the human embassy building. She watched dark purple clouds gather over the distant mountains. She was 32 years old and had worked for the Terran Diplomatic Corps for 10 years. Her job was to help humans and aliens understand each other. She was good at reading body language, even when dealing with creatures that looked nothing like humans. But the Vralth were different. They were scary in ways that made even trained soldiers nervous. The leader of the Vralth group was War Chief Kranix. He walked toward Lisa with heavy steps that shook the floor. His dark orange eyes stared at her with an intensity that made most humans want to run away. Behind him came his 3 children. They were smaller than their father, but still frightening to look at. Humans who worked at the embassy secretly called them cubs, though they would never say it out loud. The 3 young Vralth were learning their people's ways. The oldest looked about 9 years old in human terms, the middle one maybe 7, and the youngest around 5. Lisa had learned their names over the past few weeks. The oldest was Torvik, a serious young male who watched everything carefully. The middle child was Shiara, a female who was quick and clever. The youngest was Mekker, a small male who seemed curious about everything around him. Kranix stopped in front of Lisa. His voice was deep and rough like rocks grinding together. "Commander Grant, the weather is changing. My cubs are getting restless." Lisa nodded and looked at the 3 young Vralth. Torvik stared back at her with bright gold eyes. Shiara had pulled her claws back against her paws, which Lisa had learned meant respect. Little Mekker just watched the storm clouds with what looked like excitement. "Our weather station says the storm will pass by tonight," Lisa told Kranix. "The protective shields around the building will keep us safe." Kranix made a sound that could have meant yes or no. It was hard to tell with the Vralth. They did not fear storms. In fact, they seemed to enjoy them. This was just one of many things that made them difficult to understand. What nobody knew was that the scientists had made a mistake about Qatar 7's weather. The storm was not going to pass. It was getting bigger and more dangerous. By late afternoon, the wind was so strong it made the building shake. Emergency alarms went off throughout the embassy. The metal and stone structure was starting to break apart. All the diplomats and workers were told to go to the underground shelter, where they would be safe. People ran through the hallways, grabbing important documents and equipment. There was shouting and confusion everywhere. Lisa was helping people get to the shelter when she heard something that made her blood run cold. It was a high-pitched sound that cut through even the screaming wind. She knew that sound. It was the distress call of young Vralth. She turned around fast and saw Kranix. His face showed an emotion she had never seen on a Vralth before. It was terror. His own guards were holding him back, keeping him from running toward the eastern part of the building. That was where the families of the diplomats had been staying. The eastern wing was collapsing, falling apart piece by piece. The cubs were trapped inside. Lisa did not think about what she was doing. She grabbed a breathing mask and emergency thermal clothing. She ran toward the falling building as people screamed behind her. The Vralth guards roared at her, trying to warn her. Someone shouted her name. But she was already through the doorway and into the chaos of breaking metal and falling stone. Inside the eastern wing, everything was destroyed. Metal beams hung at strange angles. Pieces of the ceiling and walls were scattered everywhere. The emergency lights kept turning on and off, making everything look red and scary. Lisa's breathing mask fogged up because she was breathing so fast. She pushed deeper into the wreckage, climbing over fallen debris. She could hear the cubs now. They were calling out in their own language, making clicking and growling sounds. Lisa did not understand all their words, but she understood fear. Fear sounded the same in every language. "Torvik, Shiara, Mekker," she yelled, using the names as humans said them. "Make noise so I can find you." A cry came from somewhere to her left. Lisa climbed over a big piece of metal that had fallen from the ceiling. Her hands got cut on sharp edges, but she did not care. The building made terrible groaning sounds around her. Somewhere above, another part of the ceiling crashed down. Dust fell like rain, covering everything in gray powder. She found them in what used to be a hallway. A huge piece of the ceiling had fallen at an angle, making a small space underneath it. But the ceiling piece was slowly sinking down under its own weight. Soon it would crush whatever was beneath it. The three cubs were huddled together in that small space. Torvik stood in front of his brother and sister, trying to protect them with his own body. When he saw Lisa, his eyes went wide. "Human," he growled. The translator collar around his neck changed his words into language Lisa could understand. His voice had a strange accent. "You should not be here. You are soft, weak." "Yeah, well, nobody is perfect," Lisa said. She got down on her knees next to them and looked at the situation. Shiara's leg was trapped under a smaller piece of concrete. Mekker was shaking even though his people were supposed to be fearless predators. Torvik looked tired from standing guard over his siblings, but he did not seem hurt. Lisa went to Shiara first. She looked at the concrete piece that had trapped the young Vralth's leg. The piece was heavy, but Lisa knew she had to try. She planted her feet, grabbed the concrete with both hands, and lifted with all her strength. Her muscles burned. Her whole body shook with effort. Human bodies were not made for this kind of work. But adrenaline and fear for the cubs gave her strength she did not know she had. The concrete shifted just enough. Shiara pulled her leg free with a yelp of pain. "Can you walk?" Lisa asked. Shiara put weight on her leg and nodded, though she kept the hurt leg lifted a little bit. Another big shake rattled the building. The ceiling piece above them dropped lower. Lisa knew they only had seconds left, not minutes. She looked at the three cubs and then at the dangerous path back to safety. They needed to travel about 100 meters through all the fallen debris and broken structure. "We have to move right now," she said. "Torvik, help your sister. Mekker, stay close to me." But the youngest cub could not move. His eyes were locked on the shifting ceiling above them. He was frozen in fear. Lisa understood shock when she saw it. She had seen it in soldiers and civilians during emergencies. Without thinking about it, she picked up the 60-pound predator cub and held him in her arms. He was heavy. His body was packed with muscle even though he was young. But she held him tight against her chest. "I have got you," she whispered to him. "I promise you are safe." They started moving as fast as Shiara's hurt leg would let them. Lisa carried Mekker while Torvik supported his sister. The building screamed around them like a dying creature. Metal twisted and stone cracked with sounds like thunder. Twice, Lisa had to turn back when their path collapsed in front of them. Once she had to cover all three cubs with her own body when debris fell from above. She felt heavy pieces hit her back and shoulders. It hurt badly, but she protected the cubs. They were close to the exit when the main support beam gave way. The entire ceiling started to collapse in a wave that raced toward them. Lisa had only a split second to make a choice. She grabbed Torvik with her free arm and pulled him close even though he growled in surprise. Shiara fell because she could not move fast enough with her bad leg. Lisa dropped to her knees and covered all three cubs with her body as the world came crashing down. The weight on her back was crushing. Lisa felt bones crack in her chest. Pain exploded through her back and shoulders like fire, but she kept her body arched over the cubs, making a small protected space with her own body as tons of debris piled on top of them. In the darkness and choking dust, she could feel the cubs breathing beneath her. They were alive. She had protected them. She had succeeded even if it meant she might die here. In the darkness under all the fallen debris, Lisa could not tell how much time was passing. She focused on breathing, on staying awake, on keeping the small space around the cubs from collapsing. Every breath made sharp pains shoot through her chest where her ribs had broken. She could feel warm blood running down her back where sharp edges had cut through her emergency clothes and into her skin. The weight on her back was so heavy she thought her spine might snap at any moment. Under her protective arch, the three cubs were completely silent. She could feel their hearts beating fast against her body. She could feel their warm breath on her skin. Little Mekker was still pressed against her chest. His claws were partly out, digging into her sides, but she barely noticed the pain. Torvik and Shiara were pressed against her from below. Lisa realized she was lying across them like a human bridge. Her body was the only thing keeping tons of debris from crushing them flat. "Commander Grant?" Torvik's voice was small and shaky. It was the first time Lisa had ever heard fear in a Vralth's voice. These creatures were supposed to be the bravest warriors in the galaxy, but right now Torvik sounded like exactly what he was. "A scared child. Still here," Lisa managed to say. Her voice sounded weak and strange. "Is everyone okay down there?" "You are hurt," Shiara said quietly. Even in pain and fear, the young Vralth's hunting instincts let her smell blood. "Why did you come for us?" "We are not your family." We are not even your species. Lisa tried to laugh, but it came out as a cough that hurt her broken ribs. Where I come from, you do not have to be family to be worth saving. Humans are very strange, little Mecker whispered against her chest. You have no idea. Kid, Lisa said softly. Above them, muffled by all the debris, Lisa could hear sounds. People were shouting. There was the high-pitched whine of heavy machinery. They were digging, trying to reach them. But Lisa understood the math of their situation. The weight above them was huge. If the rescue teams made one wrong move, it could cause another collapse that would kill all of them. It would take hours to dig them out safely. She was not sure she had hours left. Lisa could feel her strength fading bit by bit. Her body wanted to give up, to sink down and let the pain and exhaustion take her, but every time her arms started to shake, every time she felt herself dropping lower, she thought about the 3 young lives depending on her. She thought about Kranix's face when he watched his children disappear into the falling building. She thought about the fragile peace between humans and Vralth that hung on moments exactly like this one. So she held on. She kept holding on even when her muscles screamed. She kept holding on even when she wanted to cry from the pain. The Vralth were different from humans in almost every way. Their muscles were thicker and stronger. Their bones were harder. Their entire bodies had been shaped by millions of years of evolution on a brutal planet where only the strongest survived. In normal times, any one of these cubs could probably beat an adult human in a fight, but trapped here in the dark, they were just children. And Lisa had spent her whole career learning to see past the claws and sharp teeth to the real people underneath. Tell me about your home, Lisa said, trying to keep everyone conscious and calm. Your real home, not this diplomatic building. Tell me about your planet. Torvik seemed to like having something else to think about. In his halting, accented speech, he described the vast hunting grounds of Vralth Prime. He talked about crystal forests that made music when the wind blew through them. He described 3 moons that painted everything in shades of orange and red. Shiara added details about their clan's territory. She talked about the ancient cave where their family had lived for thousands of years. Even little Mekor spoke up, describing his favorite climbing tree. It was so tall it reached up into the clouds. Lisa listened carefully, asking questions now and then. She kept them talking, kept them focused on something other than fear, kept herself focused on something other than pain. Time moved like thick mud. The sounds of digging grew louder, then seemed to move away. Lisa's vision started to get blurry. Everything seemed far away and dreamy. She was so tired, more tired than she had ever been in her life. Commander Grant? Torvik's voice seemed to come from a long distance away. You must not sleep. My father says when prey falls asleep during a hunt, it never wakes up. Not prey, Lisa mumbled. The words were hard to form. Partner, ally, friend. Then friends must not sleep right now, the young Vralth said with fierce determination. He sounded so much like his father in that moment. So Lisa held on some more. She held on through pain that felt like fire burning through her whole body. She held on through exhaustion that made her want to just let go. She held on through the growing coldness in her arms and legs that meant her body was starting to shut down. She held on because 3 children, alien and strange and precious, needed her to stay strong. She held on because sometimes being human meant doing impossible things simply because nobody else would do them. Finally, after what felt like days but was probably only hours, the sounds of digging got much louder right above them. A thin beam of light cut through the darkness like a knife. Voices called out, both human voices and Vralth voices speaking their growling language. Equipment whined and groaned as debris was carefully lifted away piece by piece. The first face Lisa saw when the rubble cleared was Kranix. The war chief's orange eyes were huge. His scary face showed an emotion Lisa had never seen from any Vralth before. It looked like relief mixed with disbelief, mixed with something else she could not name. Behind him, emergency workers and Vralth warriors worked side by side to clear away the remaining debris. Humans and Vralth helping each other. That alone was almost unheard of. My cubs, Kranix breathed. His voice shook. Alive, Lisa whispered. Each word was hard to say. All 3 of them. Get them out first, gentle hands reached in. Some were human hands. Some were Vralth claws being very, very careful. The cubs were pulled free one at a time. Medical people checked them for injuries right away. Someone wrapped them in thermal blankets. The cubs protested surprisingly. They called back to Lisa, trying to reach her. But their father gently but firmly guided them away to safety. Only when all 3 cubs were out and safe did the rescue crews focus on getting Lisa out. They moved with agonizing slowness. They knew she had been holding up weight that should have crushed her flat. One wrong move could cause more injury. When they finally pulled her free and laid her carefully on a stretcher, Lisa let herself smile just a little bit. She had done it. They were all alive. All 4 of them had survived. As darkness finally took her and she passed out, she heard Kranix's voice one last time. He was speaking in his own language, not using the translator. She did not understand the words. But she did not need a translator to understand the tone of his voice. It was respect. Deep, complete, absolute respect. The kind of respect the Vralth gave only to the greatest warriors. The medics rushed Lisa toward the medical bay. Kranix walked beside the stretcher, his 3 cubs following close behind. They were all limping and hurt, but they were alive. As Lisa's eyes closed, she saw Torvik reach out and gently touch her hand with one claw. It was the Vralth way of saying thank you. The way of saying you are packed now. The medical bay doors closed. The doctors and nurses swarmed around Lisa, scanning her injuries, stabilizing her condition. The readings were bad. 3 broken ribs, a cracked bone in her spine, cuts and gashes all over her back, severe bruising on 70% of her body, dangerous muscle damage from holding up weight no human should have been able to hold. But she was alive. Against all odds and all logic, the soft human had survived. Outside the medical bay, Kranix stood with his cubs. Other Vralth from the delegation gathered around, speaking in low growls. They had all seen what happened. They had all watched the human female run into a collapsing building to save cubs that were not her own. They had all seen her carried out hours later, broken and bleeding, with 3 living cubs pulled from beneath her protective body. It changed something in them. Something fundamental about how they saw humans. These soft creatures with no claws, no sharp teeth, no thick armor on their skin. These creatures who seemed so weak and fragile. They were not weak at all. They were perhaps the most dangerous species the Vralth had ever met. Not because of weapons or strength, but because they simply refused to accept what was impossible. They saw a situation with a 3% chance of success, and they tried anyway. They threw their own bodies between danger and those who needed protection. The Vralth had no word for this in their language. The closest translation was foolish, but it was not foolish. It was something else entirely. It was human. Lisa woke up 3 days later in the medical bay. Her whole body felt like one giant bruise. Pain medicine flowed through tubes into her arms, a mixture of human drugs and Vralth medical technology. The doctors had told her while she was drifting in and out of consciousness that she had 3 broken ribs, a fractured bone in her spine, cuts all over her back, and severe bruising across most of her body. They said her muscles had been strained so badly that normal humans would need months to recover. But the doctors also said something else. They said she should have died under that rubble. The weight, the injuries, the time spent holding that impossible position. Every calculation said she should not have survived. But humans had a way of ignoring what the calculation said. Her first visitor was Captain Daniel Hughes, her commanding officer. He was a stern man in his 50s with gray hair and sharp eyes. He sat down beside her bed and told her that the diplomatic summit had been postponed, but not canceled. The Vralth delegation had refused to leave Qatar 7 until Lisa recovered. That alone was shocking. The Vralth never delayed their plans for anyone. More surprising was what Captain Hughes told her next. War Chief Kranix had personally taken charge of rebuilding the Eastern Wing. He worked alongside human engineers every single day. Vralth and humans working together side by side was something nobody had ever seen before. It simply did not happen. The Vralth did not cooperate with other species like that. "You have changed something, Commander," Captain Hughes said quietly. "I am not sure even you understand what you have done." After he left, Lisa had another visitor. Her name was Dr. Helen Park, and she was a xenopsychologist. That meant she studied how different alien species think and behave. Dr. Park seemed fascinated by Lisa's decision to enter the collapsed building. "You understand the math, correct?" Dr. Park asked, looking at Lisa with intense curiosity. "The computer models say you had less than a 3% chance of success. And the Vralth cubs, even young ones, are extremely dangerous. Torvik alone could have killed you with one panicked swipe of his claws." "I know," Lisa said simply. "Then why did you do it?" Lisa thought about the question for a long moment. She remembered all her years of training in the diplomatic corps. all the classes about cultural sensitivity and proper protocol with alien species, all the rules and procedures. But when she had seen those cubs trapped, when she had heard their cries of fear, none of that training had mattered at all. Because they were kids, she finally said. They were scared. Everything else was just noise. Dr. Park wrote something down in her notes. She shook her head slowly. The Vralth have been studying humans for years. They tried to understand how we became the dominant species on Earth. Our planet is relatively safe compared to theirs. We have no natural weapons like claws or armor. They expected us to be weak. Instead, they are discovering that humans might be the most reckless species in the entire galaxy. I prefer to call it determined, Lisa said. She smiled a little, even though it made her split lip hurt. Call it what you want, Dr. Park said, but you have given them something to think about. Something that challenges everything they believe about strength and survival. Her third visitor came that evening. A nurse helped Lisa sit up straighter in bed. Every movement hurt, but Lisa wanted to look presentable. When the door opened, Kranix had to duck low to fit through the doorway. The medical bay was built for humans, and he was much too tall. Behind him came his 3 cubs, moving slowly and carefully. They looked so different in the soft lighting of the medical bay. Less scary. More uncertain. Torvik carried something in his claws, holding it with surprising gentleness. Shiara's leg was wrapped in bandages, and she walked with a small limp. Little Mekker stayed close to his father, but his gold eyes were fixed on Lisa with an intensity that was almost uncomfortable. Commander Grant, Kranix began. Then he paused. He said a word in his own language that the translator could not convert to human speech. The translator made a small error sound. The human language has no word that matches, Kranix explained. In our tongue, it means one who shields the pack at cost of self. It is our highest honor, the thing we value most. Lisa did not know what to say. I just did what anyone would do. No, Kranix's voice was firm and hard as stone. You did what nobody else did. You did what nobody else could do. My warriors are trained from birth for battle. They are the strongest and bravest of our kind. But not one of them would have entered that collapse. The risk was too great. The chance of living was too small. But you, soft and fragile by our standards, you ran toward danger to save children who were not even your species. He made a gesture to Torvik. The young Vralth stepped forward carefully. He extended his claws and offered what he was carrying. It was a small stone, dark and smooth, with lines of orange running through it like veins. The stone seemed to glow faintly in the medical bay's light. This stone is from our clan's first den, Torvik explained. His human language was much better than it had been before. Someone had been teaching him. It has been in our family for more generations than we can count. It is given only to those who become Pek. You saved us, Commander Grant. You bled for us. You held back death itself with your own body. By Vralth law and tradition, you are now Clan Kranix. You are Pek. Lisa took the stone with shaking hands. It was warm, almost hot to the touch. She felt its weight, both physical and symbolic. She understood what this meant, even if her mind could barely process it. The Vralth did not make friends with outsiders. They did not trust other species. Their entire culture was built on the strength of family, of clan, of pack. These bonds were sacred to them, and they had just made a human part of that sacred bond. I do not know what to say, Lisa admitted. Her voice was thick with emotion. Say you will accept, Shiara said softly. Say you will not dishonor us by refusing this gift. Lisa looked at each of them in turn. Kranix, proud and powerful. Torvik, young but already showing signs of his father's strength and wisdom. Shiara, clever and observant. Mekker, still shy but braver than before. She thought about the darkness under the rubble. She thought about the choice she had made without even thinking about it. I accept, she said. I am honored to be Pek. Little Mekker suddenly moved fast. He darted forward and pressed his head against Lisa's hand. It was a gesture she had learned was very affectionate for Vralth. Usually they only did it with close family members. Lisa gently stroked the crest on his head, being careful because of her injuries. He made a sound like purring, a deep rumble in his chest. The galaxy will learn of this, Kranix said. His voice carried a weight of certainty. Word is already spreading among all the Vralth worlds. The story of the human who carried our cubs from death. The soft one who proved stronger than stone. Stories will be told of this day for many generations to come. I hope they are good stories, Lisa said with a weak laugh. They will be true stories, Kranix replied. And truth is what will change everything between our peoples. You showed us that humans are not weak. You showed us that your strength does not come from claws or sharp teeth. It comes from something we never thought to look for. You choose to protect the weak and helpless even when it costs you greatly. You choose to care about others, even when logic says you should not. This is not weakness. This is perhaps the most powerful thing we have ever seen. One of the other Vralth from the delegation entered the room. He was older than Kranix, with scars covering his arms and face. His name was Elder Varkoth, and he was respected among all Vralth as a keeper of their history and traditions. I have studied humans for 20 cycles, Elder Varkoth said in a gravelly voice. I have read your histories. I have watched your entertainment broadcasts. I have analyzed your wars and your peace, but I did not understand you until now. He approached Lisa's bed slowly, as if approaching something precious and fragile. We Vralth pride ourselves on our strength, he continued. We survive because we are hard and fierce and relentless, but we survive alone. We trust only our pack. We see the universe as a place of constant battle. Then we meet humans and we think you are prey, easy to defeat, simple to understand. He paused and looked at each of the cubs, then back at Lisa. But you are not prey. You are not simple. You have a strength we lack entirely. You can care for those outside your pack. You can sacrifice for strangers. And somehow, impossibly, you survive anyway. You thrive anyway. This breaks every rule we thought we knew about survival. The room was quiet except for the beeping of medical equipment. Finally, Elder Varkoth did something that shocked everyone in the room. He lowered his head to Lisa in a gesture of deep respect. For a Vralth elder to bow to anyone, especially someone from another species, was unthinkable. You honor us by accepting our bond, he said, and we will carry this honor with pride. Over the following days, more Vralth came to visit Lisa. Some were curious. Some were skeptical. But all of them looked at her with new eyes. The word spread fast through the Vralth delegation and beyond. Messages were sent to Vralth Prime and to other Vralth colonies across the galaxy. A human had done the impossible. Not through technology or weapons or tricks, but through simple, stubborn courage and compassion, and in doing so, she had cracked open a door that had been closed for the 2 weeks later, the formal diplomatic summit began again. Lisa was still healing, still in pain, but she insisted on being there. She walked with a cane now, and probably would for several more weeks. Her back was covered in bandages under her uniform. But she stood straight beside War Chief Kranix as both human and Vralth delegations gathered in the newly rebuilt conference hall. The room looked different than before. Humans and Vralth had worked together to rebuild it after the storm damage. That cooperation showed in every detail. Human efficiency combined with Vralth strength. The result was something neither species could have built alone. It was, Lisa thought, a good symbol for what might come. More Vralth delegations had arrived from across this sector of space. They came because they heard the story of what happened during the storm. Lisa found herself being stared at by dozens of orange and gold Vralth eyes. Some looked at her with curiosity, like she was a puzzle they needed to solve. Others looked at her with respect. A few seemed almost disbelieving, as if they could not accept that the story was true. War Chief Kranix stood to speak to the entire assembly. The room became completely silent. Even the small sounds of breathing and movement stopped. When Kranix spoke, his voice carried to every corner of the hall. We came to this place believing we understood humans, he began. We studied their history, their wars, their expansion across the stars. We looked at data and reports. We saw a species with no natural weapons. They have no claws, no thick armor, no enhanced senses. We wondered how they survived at all on a universe as dangerous as this one. He paused, letting his gaze move slowly across all the gathered Vralth. Then one human showed us what we could not see in our data. When my cubs were trapped in the collapse when death came for them, it was not Vralth strength that saved them. It was human courage. Commander Lisa Grant knew she would likely die. She understood the numbers and the risk. But she entered a falling building to reach children who were not her species. She carried them. She protected them with her own body when the final collapse came. For hours, she held back tons of weight while injured and in pain. She created a space for my cubs to live, using nothing but her own will to survive. A sound like distant thunder moved through the Vralth delegation. This was the part that seemed to fascinate them most. The holding on when logic and math said to let go. The refusal to quit even when quitting was the only sensible option. This is human strength, Kranix continued, his voice growing stronger. Not in their bodies, but in their spirits. They are the most relentless species we have met. They do not know when to quit, because they choose not to learn that lesson. They face impossible situations and see them as challenges instead of certain death. And, most importantly, they extend their protection to others without asking what they will gain from it. He turned to Lisa. She felt the weight of his gaze, and the gaze of every Vralth in the room. Humans have a saying that we have heard in their broadcasts. They say humanity, fuck yeah. We thought this was simple arrogance. Stupid pride from a weak species, but now we understand its true meaning. It is not arrogance. It is a statement of defiant hope. It is the battle cry of a species that refuses to believe anything is truly impossible. Kranix reached down and placed his massive clawed hand on Lisa's shoulder. He was gentle, so careful not to hurt her while she was still healing. Commander Lisa Grant is now Clan Kranix. She is Pack. And through her, we begin to understand that humans could be Pack to all Vralth if we allow it. Not as servants, not as prey or weak allies, but as equals who bring something to our alliance that we lack. The stubborn refusal to abandon hope even in the darkest moments. The hall erupted, but not with violence as some humans had feared. The Vralth struck their claws against the stone tables in a rhythmic pattern. The sound was like thunder so loud it shook the walls. Lisa would learn later that this was the highest compliment the Vralth could give. It was their way of accepting a new truth into their understanding of the universe. Over the following weeks, the summit proceeded better than anyone had dreamed possible. Trade agreements were signed that would benefit both species. Cultural exchange programs were set up so humans and Vralth could learn about each other. But more important than any official agreement was the genuine friendship that began to form. Vralth warriors started training with human soldiers. They were amazed at human tactics. Humans did not rely on individual strength. They worked as teams using technology and strategy to overcome stronger opponents. The Vralth had always thought this was cowardice. Now they began to see it as a different kind of courage. Human diplomats learned Vralth customs and traditions. They discovered that beneath the scary exterior, Vralth valued family and loyalty above all else. They were not cruel or evil. They were simply shaped by a harsh world that had taught them to be strong or die. The story of Lisa and the cubs spread far beyond Qatar 7. On human worlds, she became a symbol of what the diplomatic corps stood for. But Lisa always felt uncomfortable with the attention. Whenever someone called her a hero, she would shake her head and say she just did what needed to be done. On Vralth worlds, the tale grew into legend. The details got bigger with each telling, but the core remained true. A human had entered a collapse, had carried 3 predator cubs to safety, had held death itself at bay with nothing but determination and will. Young Vralth were told the story as a lesson. Not all strength comes from claws and teeth. Sometimes the strongest thing is refusing to give up on those who need you. Other species in the galactic community started paying attention. If the fearsome Vralth, who had never allied with anyone, could be moved by human actions, what did that say about humanity? What did it say about their place in the galaxy? The Torvan Unity, a collective of peaceful trader species, reached out to the Terran Alliance. They had been afraid of humans before, thinking humans might be as warlike as the Vralth, but now they saw humans differently. Any species that would risk their own lives for alien children might be worth knowing. The Kelthran Dominion, a proud warrior culture, sent observers to study human military tactics. They had dismissed humans as weak before. Now they wanted to understand how humans had survived and thrived without natural weapons. Even the mysterious Sindari, who rarely spoke to other species at all, sent a message of acknowledgement to the Terran Alliance. The message was brief, but its meaning was clear. Humans had proven themselves worthy of respect. Lisa went back to active duty after 6 weeks of recovery. She still walked with a slight limp. The doctor said it might be permanent. Her back was covered in scars that would never fully heal, but she did not mind. They were reminders of what she had accomplished. Of 3 young lives saved, of a bridge built between species that had seemed impossible to connect. The cubs sent her regular messages. Torvik wrote about his combat training and how he was learning human military history. Shiara sent updates about her studies in xenobiology, the science of how different alien species work. She wanted to understand humans better. Little Mekor sent simple messages full of questions. He wanted to know everything about Earth, about human cities, about what humans did for fun. Lisa answered every message. She told them about her childhood in the mountains of Colorado. She described human festivals and holidays. She sent them pictures of Earth's oceans and forests. Through these exchanges, Lisa realized something important. She was not just teaching the cubs about humans. She was learning about Vralth in a way no amount of official reports could teach her. Captain Hughes called her to his office one day. He had news that made her pause. The Terran Alliance wants to expand the diplomatic corps, he said. They want to train more people to do what you did. Not the dangerous rescue part, he added quickly, but the part where you saw past the differences to the people underneath. They think this skill might be humanity's greatest asset in the galaxy. What do they want from me? Lisa asked. They want you to help train the new recruits, teach them how to really see other species, how to build trust across seemingly impossible divides. Lisa thought about it. She thought about those hours in the darkness, holding on when everything said to let go. She thought about 3 scared cubs who were now 3 confident young Vralth, growing stronger every day. She thought about Kranix's words about humans bringing something unique to the galaxy. I will do it, she said, but on one condition. What is that? We include Vralth in the training program too. If we are going to learn to work together, both species need to learn, not just humans trying to understand Vralth, but Vralth learning to understand humans too. Captain Hughes smiled. I will send your recommendation up the chain, but I think they will agree. The Vralth seem very interested in understanding humans better now. That night, Lisa stood on the observation deck again, looking out at the same mountains where the storm had come from weeks before. The sky was clear now, painted in shades of purple and orange as the sun set. The beauty of Qatar 7 had returned. Her communicator chimed. It was a message from Kranix, brief and direct in typical Vralth fashion. You changed us, Lisa Grant. We will not forget. We will honor this debt for all our generations. Lisa smiled and sent back an equally brief response. No debt between pack. 1 year after the storm, Lisa stood once again on Qatar 7. This time she was not here for emergency diplomacy. She was here for a ceremony. The site where the eastern wing had collapsed was now a memorial. It was a joint project designed and built by both humans and Vralth working together. The process of building it had been as important as the memorial itself. Every disagreement was talked through. Every design choice was made together. It took 3 times longer than if either species had built it alone, but the result was something neither could have achieved separately. The memorial was beautiful in its simplicity. A large statue stood at the center, carved from the same stone that made up Vralth buildings. But it was shaped using human artistic techniques. The figure was stylized enough to be universal, not clearly human or Vralth. It showed someone sheltering 3 smaller forms from falling debris above. The protective stance was unmistakable. Around the base of the statue, words were carved in both human standard language and Vralth script. Lisa had helped choose those words. Here in darkness and dust, a human chose to protect the children of another species at risk of her own life. Here, through one act of courage, 2 peoples learned to see each other not as alien but as alike. Here the future began. Kranix stood beside Lisa, his 3 cubs flanking him. They were much taller now, growing fast as Vralth did. Torvik was almost as tall as his father. Shiara moved with the grace of a trained warrior. Even little Mekker was not so little anymore. They had come all the way from Vralth Prime specifically for this ceremony. The clearing in front of the memorial was filled with people from dozens of species. Humans and Vralth made up most of the crowd. But Lisa saw Torvan traders, Kelthran warriors, even a few Sindari in their environmental suits. Word of the ceremony had spread and people had come from across this part of the galaxy to see it. Do you think it will last? Lisa asked Kranix quietly. This peace between our peoples? Kranix was silent for a moment, watching the crowd. All things end eventually, he said with his usual practical honesty. Stars die. Civilizations fall. Nothing lasts forever. Before Lisa could feel disappointed, he continued. But this peace is built on something strong. It is built on truth, on actions witnessed by many, on a debt that goes deeper than words or treaties. My cubs live and breathe because of you. Every day they are alive is a reminder to every Vralth that humans are worthy of trust and respect. That is not easily forgotten. Mekker, who had been quietly standing beside them, suddenly spoke up. When I have cubs of my own someday, I will tell them about you, Commander Grant. I will tell them about the human who would not let go, Who held on when holding on seemed impossible. Lisa felt her throat tighten with emotion. She reached out and stroked his crest like she had done in the medical bay a year ago. He was much bigger now, but he still leaned into her touch like he had when he was small and scared. "That is all any of us can do," Lisa said softly. "Hold on to what matters. Hope we are strong enough when it counts." The ceremony began. Elder Varkoth spoke first, his old voice carrying across the crowd. He talked about Vralth history, about their long isolation, about their belief that they needed no one else. Then he talked about how one moment, one human action, had challenged everything they thought they knew. "We believed strength meant standing alone," he said. "We thought asking for help was weakness. We looked at cooperation between species and saw only foolishness. But Commander Lisa Grant showed us a different kind of strength. The strength to care. The strength to sacrifice. The strength to hope even in darkness." Captain Hughes spoke next, representing the Terran Alliance. He talked about the Diplomatic Corps' mission to build bridges between species. He admitted that even the best training and preparation sometimes was not enough. Sometimes you just had to trust your instincts and do what felt right, even when it seemed crazy. Lisa Grant did not follow protocol that day, Hughes said. She broke about 15 different safety regulations. If I am being honest, she should probably have been disciplined for her actions. The crowd made various sounds of surprise and confusion. Hughes smiled slightly. But sometimes the right thing to do is also the reckless thing, the illogical thing, the thing that makes no sense on paper but makes perfect sense in your heart. That is the human way, and maybe, just maybe, the galaxy needs a little more of that. Other speakers followed. A Torvan ambassador talked about how the story had inspired his people to reach out to humans. A Kelthran general admitted that his people had much to learn from human tactics and human courage. Even a Sindari representative, speaking through a translation device, acknowledged that humans had proven themselves unique among species. Finally, it was Lisa's turn to speak. She walked to the front slowly, her cane tapping against the stone ground. Her limp was barely noticeable now, but it was still there, a permanent reminder. She looked out at the crowd, at all those different faces from different worlds. Human faces, Vralth faces, faces of species she barely knew, all gathered here because of one moment in time when she had made a choice. "I'm not good at speeches," Lisa began honestly. "I am better at doing than at talking. But I will try." She glanced back at the memorial statue, at that frozen moment of protection. A year ago, I heard 3 children crying in a collapsed building. In that moment, I did not think about species differences. I did not think about probability of success. I did not think about protocols or regulations or proper procedure. I just thought about 3 kids who needed help. She paused, gathering her thoughts. People keep calling what I did heroic, but I do not think it was. Heroes do extraordinary things. I just did the ordinary thing. The thing any decent person would do. I saw someone in trouble and I helped. That should not be heroic. That should be normal. Murmurs of agreement moved through the human part of the crowd. The Vralth were quieter, listening intently. "But maybe that is what makes humans different," Lisa continued. "We think helping each other should be normal. We think caring about others should be expected. We are not always good at it. We fail a lot. We fight among ourselves. We make mistakes, but we keep trying. We keep reaching out. We keep hoping that maybe, just maybe, we can make things a little bit better." She looked directly at Kranix and his cubs. "The Vralth taught me something too. They taught me about the strength of loyalty, about the power of family bonds, about dedication and discipline and honor. We have learned from each other. And that learning, that exchange, that is what will last. Not because we are similar, but because we are different and we choose to value those differences." Lisa stepped back from the speaking position. The crowd was silent for a moment. Then applause started, human hands clapping, and the Vralth began their claw strikes against stone. The sound built and built until it seemed like the whole planet was celebrating. After the ceremony, there was a reception in the restored embassy building. Lisa found herself surrounded by people wanting to talk to her, to ask questions, to express their admiration. It was overwhelming. She eventually slipped away to a quiet balcony, needing a moment of peace. Torvik found her there a few minutes later. The young Vralth had grown into an impressive figure. He would probably be taller than his father soon. "Hiding?" he asked with what might have been amusement. "Resting," Lisa corrected. "There is a difference." Torvik stood beside her, looking out at the rebuilt compound. I am joining the Vralth Diplomatic Service, he said suddenly. I am going to work on building relationships between our species. Lisa looked at him in surprise. I thought you were training to be a warrior like your father. I am trained as a warrior, Torvik said. But you taught me that there are different kinds of battles, different ways to be strong. I want to fight for understanding instead of fighting with weapons. My father supports this choice. He is proud of you, Lisa said. I can tell. He is proud of all of us. Shiara is studying medicine. She wants to understand how to heal both Vralth and human injuries. Mekor wants to be an engineer. He talks about building ships that can carry both our species to new worlds. Lisa felt a swell of emotion. These three cubs who had been so scared in the darkness were now planning futures that involved both species. That was the real victory, she realized. Not just that they survived, but what they chose to do with that survival. Your father said something to me once, Lisa said. He said I changed the Vralth, but I think you three will change them even more. You are the future. We are the future because of you, Torvik said seriously. Because you showed us that change is possible, that different species can truly care about each other. Over the following months and years, the effects of that one rescue rippled outward. More and more species joined the alliance between humans and Vralth. Trade routes opened up. Knowledge was shared. Cultural exchanges became common. It was not always smooth. There were misunderstandings and conflicts. But there was also a foundation of trust that had not existed before. Lisa continued her work in the diplomatic corps. She trained new recruits, both human and Vralth, in the art of seeing past differences. She traveled to different worlds, helping to establish new relationships. She was not always successful. Some species remained isolated. Some conflicts could not be resolved peacefully, but she kept trying, kept